Rewriting the Monument, the Egerton Ryerson Statue, and Public Memory in Canada. Digital exhibit, the Egerton Ryerson Statue and Public Memory in Toronto. Hello everyone, my name is Jacob Gerard, and today I'm presenting my public history project, a digital exhibit exploring Egerton Ryerson statue that once stood at Toronto Metropolitan University. The statue became one of the most visible and widely discussed monuments in Canada during conversations about residential schools and reconciliation. My project examines where the statue came from, why it became so contested, how different groups responded to it, and what its removal revealed about public news today. I used Toronto Metropolitan University's archival materials, media coverage from Global News and Al Jazeera, and an analysis from Higher Education Strategy Associates to build a balanced, evidence-based exhibit. Why a statue matters. I begin with a central question for my project. Why does a statue matter? Statues seem fixed and unchanging, but they are actually active symbols. They reflect what a community chooses to honor and what stories it prioritizes. When a statue stands at a public space, especially at a university, it signals a value that institutions want to project. In Ryerson's case, the statue became controversial because it represented not only his contributions to public education, but also his involvement in shaping early models of residential schools. As public understanding grew, particularly after the discovery of unmarked graves at former residential school sites, the meaning of the statue shifted dramatically. Instead of being a neutral monument, it became a symbol of historical harm and ongoing colonial injustice. The audience and purpose. This digital exhibit is meant for students, educators, and community members, people who may walk by the monument every day without considering their deeper meanings. The purpose is to use Ryerson's statue to show how monuments can spark debate, conflict, and change. I present the history of the statue, the protests surrounding it, and the institutional decision that followed, and the larger questions these events raise. Ultimately, my aim is to help people understand how monuments shape public memory and how to challenge them, and how challenging them can be a part of a broader process of reconciliation. Who was Egerton Ryerson? To understand this controversy, we need to understand Egerton Ryerson. Ryerson was a 19th century Methodist minister and educator. He played a major role in establishing Ontario's public school system and is often credited with helping shape early provincial education policies. However, Toronto Metropolitan University's own historical timeline acknowledges that Ryerson's writing on Indigenous education influenced aspects of residential school systems. His recommendations also about industrial education and religious instruction contributed to a system that ultimately caused cultural loss, family separation, and generational trauma for Indigenous communities. This divided legacy, educational reform on one hand and colonial harm on the other, is exactly why his commemoration became so deeply contested. The origins of the statue. The Ryerson statue was commissioned in 1889 and later placed on the campus of what would become Ryerson University. For decades, it stood as a symbol of the institution's origins and a celebration of Ryerson's contributions to Ontario's education. At the time of its installation, there was little public recognition of the harmful effects of residential schools. The statue therefore represents an older commemorative tradition, one that highlighted settler success while obscuring Indigenous experiences. Understanding this original context helps explain why the statue was accepted for so long before becoming controversial. Rising competitiveness. Public attitudes began to change significantly in 2010s. According to Toronto Metropolitan University press books, the university added a Truth and Reconciliation Commission plaque, as you see on the slides, besides the statue in 2018, acknowledging Ryerson's link to residential school systems. While this was intended to provide context, many students and Indigenous community members felt it was not enough. Protest activity increased, especially in 2020 when activists covered the statue with paint, red handprints, and banners calling for the removal. These actions were part of a broader nationwide movement demanding that institutions confront these colonial histories embedded in their public spaces. The statue became a symbol not only of Ryerson's legacy but of the university's response to reconciliation. The removal and aftermath. The statue was finally thrown to the ground on June 6, 2021. Media outlets such as Global News and Al Jazeera reported extensively on the event, noting that it occurred shortly after the discovery of unmarked graves at former residential school sites, heightened national shock and grief. Following the statue's removal, Toronto Metropolitan University confirmed it would not be restored or replaced. This decision formed a part of a wider institutional shift. In April 2022, the university officially changed its name from Ryerson University to Toronto Metropolitan University. This renaming alongside the statue's permanent removal represented a major transformation in institutional identity and a public acknowledgement of the harm linked to Ryerson's legacy. Indigenous and survivor perspectives. For Indigenous communities, survivors, and their families, the statue represented a painful reminder of colonial policies and the trauma of residential schools. Many saw the statue as a symbol of disregard for Indigenous experiences, especially when placed at a prominent university campus. Removing it was understood as a long overdue step towards meaningful reconciliation. Media coverage emphasized how Ryerson's legacy was not abstract. His ideas contributed to systems that deeply harmed Indigenous communities and their children. Including these perspectives in my exhibit was essential because they reflect the lived experiences at the core of this debate. Institutionalized perspectives. However, not all responses were the same. Some historians, alumni, and commentators, including writers from higher education strategy associates, expressed concerns about historical erasure. They argue that while Ryerson's harmful legacy must be acknowledged, the statue could have been moved to a museum where it could be properly contextualized rather than destroyed. Memory, education, and reconciliation. The Ryerson statue case highlights the ways public memory changes over time. Removing a statue is not about erasing history. It's about reconsidering how that history is presented and who gets to tell it. Institutions like TMU play a major role in shaping historical understanding, and their decisions signal what values they choose to uphold. The removal and renaming reflect an institutional shift towards acknowledging colonial harm and taking steps towards reconciliation. This case shows how considered monuments and contested monuments can spark new conversations about responsibility, accountability, and truth-telling. Interactive exhibit elements. My digital exhibit, it brings together photographs, timelines, and media coverage to help audiences visualize the statue's history. Using TMU's official key date timelines, I created a chronological structure that shows how the debates evolved. I also included before and after images published by Global News, plus contextualized and contextual reporting from Al Jazeera that connects the statue's toppling to national conversations about unmarked graves. Working on this project reshaped my understanding of monuments and public history. I learned that the statues are not neutral and that they reflect power, memory, and institutional priorities. I also learned that reconciliation is required, confronting difficulties rather than avoiding them. At the same time, this project taught me the importance of representing multiple viewpoints, even when they differ. The Ryerson statue showed me how communities negotiate meaning, responsibility, and identity in real time. Thank you.